Thank you, everyone. I'm here today with Scott Stettler from Wasatch Venture Partners, Christian Adams from Repair Pricer, and Katie Malinsky with Simply Apartments. And the topic today is going to be talking about the life cycle of the residential rentals and housing and everything in between. So with that said, again, we have our investor, Scott Stettler. He is with Wasatch Venture Partners. And I'd love for Scott to give us a little bit of history about Wasatch,
Sure.
where you started and what you're focused on would be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Laurie. And thanks for having me on this panel today. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about this. This is my life right now. And I kind of wake up thinking about this, and I go to bed thinking about this. So this is exciting times in the multifamily real estate world, and even commercial real estate in general, and Proptech. The Wasatch Group actually started about 30 plus years ago, and it started in multifamily real estate. Our CEO, Deloy Hansen, was able to take advantage of a down market and entered into the multifamily space, kind of starting in Salt Lake and Sacramento, and was able to buy real estate for pennies on the dollar, turn a lot of those around and refinance those, pull the proceeds out and grow the portfolio. 30 plus years later, we have 17,000 units that we own and manage. We do not do any third-party management, but we own and manage 17,000 apartment units across the West. So we're in California, Arizona, Colorado, Washington, and Utah. And then, throughout that process, he also expanded his commercial real estate as far as high-rise office. So we have about 3 million square feet of commercial office building and commercial retail. A lot of that is in the Salt Lake area, along the Wasatch Front. And then we also have a few hotels, restaurants, and real estate of that nature that we own and manage. So, interestingly enough, throughout that process over the 30 years, several opportunities to incubate companies or companies that came to Deloy that were wanting his expertise and his funding to back them, kind of just started to build a venture portfolio as well. And now that venture portfolio, when you look at the whole Wasatch Group, is worth more than the real estate. So, and some of those companies we've incubated are a company, Conservice, that is the largest utility billing and submetering company in the country. And we have a garbage company. We started out of Sacramento, and we have cabinet companies, and we have various companies that we've incubated. And I'll talk about one in specifically a little bit later in our conversation. But we also have had companies that have come to us and wanted funding and investment. So we have medical device company, and we have plastics molding company. And so we're kind of all over the board. But the area that I focus on really is Proptech. So over the past kind of 7 years, we've put a heavier focus on Proptech investing within my group under Wasatch Venture Partners. And we have focused on Proptech. We kind of were specific to the multifamily industry when we started. But as we're going to talk about, kind of that life cycle of a resident going all the way from a renter to a homeowner has kind of expanded our investment strategy. And now they're all starting to kind of mesh together. But, we've invested in smart apartment technology and CRM platforms. And we even have some service companies that do compliance services for affordable housing. And then we have a company that does cloud-based software for perimeter access for commercial buildings that we've also actually kind of integrated with our smart apartment company. And so now you've got the best of both worlds with smart apartments and and perimeter access for common area. So, our big thing is that we like to, invest in companies that we can make a difference in, and that we can bring our expertise over the last 30 years into that business and help them grow and create synergies between our portfolio companies. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Sounds great. Sounds great. No, that's wonderful. I'm going to kind of have our companies talk about what products they have and where they see they fit within that lifestyle. So I'll start with Christian.
Hey, Laurie. Yeah, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about Repair Pricer. What is your history, and where did you come from within the industry, and what really prompted you to start the company?
Yeah, so I think probably where to start is I became a licensed agent in about 2004 initially. And actually, I worked in the multifamily. I did apartment locating, and then I kind of moved into residential home sales and listings. And eventually, by around 2010, 2011, I was running a team of about 80 to 100 agents in Texas, multiple teams in multiple cities. And we worked primarily on the investment and management and buyer rep side. And we kept on running into this one issue. So whenever anybody is, under contract to purchase a home in the US, you typically get a home inspection as part of that process, right? Just due diligence to find out what's going on with the home. Is there any lingering maintenance issues or something the seller's not aware of? They're looking for problems really with that house. And you get the inspection report back, and it's great. It's very detailed. They're often up to 80 pages, and they really, really tell you every single thing you need to know about that home, apart from one thing. And that's what it's going to cost to fix all those problems that they found. Well, that's really what you need to know, because typically after the inspection, you would come back and renegotiate items, or just say to the seller, hey, were you aware of these issues? What are we going to do to address these? Are we going to get these repaired? As a buyer's agent, it's your job really to go and do that for the client. Well, without a number, without an estimate, you can't do that. Every big trade organization for home inspectors, they state that the inspector should not be giving repair estimates. So you used to have two options. You could guesstimate, right? Most realtors are not contractors. They don't really understand, they don't come from that background. They're sales and negotiation experts, not contractors. So really you're putting a huge liability on yourself, and you're also doing a disservice to the client. Well, your next option is let's go get some contractors in, right? So we were trying to do that, but in Dallas in 2010, 2015, a contractor was not going to show up to the house for free, right? Especially nowadays as well, it's even worse. They're too busy building, doing renovations, doing flips. So they're going to start charging you to come out to the house. And as an agent, you're looking at spending 1 to 2 days to go and get the estimates you need to move forward. It upsets the seller too. Like me, I've got a 2-year-old daughter and 2 dogs. You want me to get out of the house for contractors to come in 3 times in a 2-day period? It's not a 5-minute thing. So we actually went out to look for a way to do this, to just turn home inspection reports into repair estimates. And it didn't exist. It simply did not exist. And we couldn't understand that, because this is happening almost 6 million times a year and nobody's addressed it. So we started building it. And it changed from an internal tool at my brokerages. It became so popular that other agents started asking for it outside the brokerage. We started charging for it. And then a little light went off on our heads, and we're like, this is a business. This is solving a big problem. So fast forward to now, anybody can visit repairpricer.com or use our web app, and they can turn any home inspection report into a really accurate repair estimate in a very, very fast amount of time, like with literally just a few clicks. And what that's done is just completely remove that pain point for the agents and the buyers. So now you can move forward and actually make an educated decision, right? Yeah, before great. They didn't have the answers, or they just guessed, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it was always contentious too, because one side always would probably feel like, there wasn't a lot of justification, or they might feel like they were being asked for too much of a concession. So I think that kind of removes all of those sort of stress points from the negotiation. So that's wonderful. I know I've been in that position myself. So
yeah,
that's really, really definitely solving a pain point. Now I want to turn it over to Katie, because you have something that kind of really addresses a different part of the life cycle, and that is finding a rental. So tell us a little bit more about Simply Apartments and how you address that problem.
Sure. Hi, Laurie. Hi, everyone else. So Simply Apartments was born out of a frustration that I experienced myself and my clients that I was working with experienced. I moved out to Minneapolis, Minnesota for a couple of years. The winters were a little too brutal, so I didn't stay, but I joined a brokerage that had 3 different divisions within their brokerage. They had a leasing division, a buy-sell division, and a rentals management division. So I joined the leasing team and started working with rental clients who were interested in finding an apartment and then working with us later on to buy a home. So through this process, to schedule a showing at an apartment building is really, really difficult. It takes multiple phone calls, multiple emails. If you want to see more than one property, you have to coordinate with the on-site staff, your client, your own schedule, and try and navigate getting all of these properties lined up in a row. It's very complicated. It's not a simple process. It's not friendly for the renters. Oftentimes they have to take time off work to get into a property. They have to schedule a couple weeks in advance. If they're visiting from out of town, they might miss out on a number of properties. When I moved to Minneapolis, I experienced that. I was only able to tour 3 different apartment buildings that I was interested in, when I had a lot more that I wanted to see, but I just simply could not get in to see them. So I thought there has to be a better way to go about this, which is how I created Simply Apartments. It is utilizing local real estate agents to cover apartment showings at a time that works for the renter. So the renter goes to the apartment website, searches for the property that they're interested in, hits the schedule showing now button, and they are taken to a calendar page, essentially, that lets them select the day and time that works for them, enter some contact information, and then rental criteria information. And then they are connected with a real estate agent that is available at their chosen time. It's instant. The agents accept appointments within a couple of minutes, and then they are followed up with a text confirmation of their appointment, an email confirmation with a calendar invite. They also have the photo and contact information of the agent that they are meeting on site, so they know who to look for when they arrive. And then the agent will typically follow up with a phone call to confirm and ask any qualifying questions or answer any questions that they might have about the property beforehand. So it's really taking this process of renting from multiple phone calls, texts, back and forth emails, to selecting the day and time that works for you, and then getting into the property. So properties no longer miss appointments that they could have had otherwise. Real estate agents are being connected with renters to generate some consistent income by covering these apartment showings and building their book of business for future sales down the road. And the renters obviously are getting their greatest benefit of being able to do this at a time that works for them instead of trying to work around everyone else's schedule. So that's sort of how Simply falls into that. Again, it's connecting the renter with a local resource to help them through the rental process, and then they can continue working with that person down the road when they're ready to buy in the future.
Got it. No, that was a very thorough and very, very great explanation of it and how the product works and really what prompted you to start, what problem you saw. So I'm going to kind of take back right now to Scott, because we have 2 totally different techs. One is really for somebody that's renting and facilitating that, trying to find an apartment and really helping the apartment owners, helping the renters, and helping real estate agents make more money. And then the other is really at the other end is buying a home and sort of helping facilitate that process. So my question to Scott is, where do you see the most investment dollars going, or the most disruption in the market within that life cycle? Is it, kind of consistent through the life cycle, or has there been more innovation in one area than another?
Well, first of all, listening to both Christian and Katie talk about their companies, it's exciting to me, because what they've done is they have determined a problem, and in this case, it's more on the resident side, right? Or the buyer, either the resident or the buyer. They've determined a problem, and then they're putting a solution forward to make their lives easier, to make the process easier, and they found a way to monetize that, and that's really the key. And so when I look at the resident life cycle, I look all the way from lead generation, all the way through the process of rent, actually entering into a lease, which, like Katie explained, there are problems in that process. And then managing that life cycle all the way while they are renters and residents of properties, and then helping them transition from a renter to a home buyer. And that whole life cycle is really interesting to us. It's becoming more and more apparent that there are problems along the way. And it's not just problems for the residents or the home buyers. There are problems to be solved for the real estate owners. There's problems to be solved for the property management companies in the process. There's problems to be solved for the builders, for the real estate brokers, for the inspection agents inspecting new homes. I mean, so you start to look at this whole life cycle and go, there's all these problems we can solve. And in the past, it's been pretty manual how we've solved those problems. It's been pretty inefficient. And now we're looking at it going, okay, how can we tie technology and Proptech into this mix to make it more efficient, more effective, more cost effective, beneficial to everyone involved in that whole life cycle. So when I look at where I've seen a lot of dollars going, it is in the CRM area, which is really managing those leads. I've seen huge amounts of dollars going into that space. We have a company that we incubated called Rent Dynamics that is in the space. So I'm a little bit more aware of the dollars that are going into that actual space, which means not necessarily the lead generation or even the leasing process. It's more of the getting them in for an appointment and then managing that lead to make sure you don't lose that lead, to set appointments and get them all the way and manage them all the way through the process of signing a lease. So there's been a lot of dollars going into that space because leads are like gold, right? So owners and managers have realized, hey, leads are the most valuable thing that you can have in the multifamily space. We need to make sure we take care of those leads, nurture those leads, and make sure they turn into leases. So I've seen a large dollar amount spent there. I've also seen a focus. COVID obviously shifted to where there weren't people in the leasing offices, and Katie's kind of solving this problem as well with her platform. And but I've also seen a lot of like self-touring Proptech and things like that, and even some of that's been built into one of the companies that does smart apartments that we've invested in. Dwello we've invested in Dwello, and they are now integrated with Pinwheel, and so now they're doing self-touring as well as part of their smart apartment process. So I've seen a lot of investment in that stage, and I think that's where I've seen the most investment, honestly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, that's definitely very interesting. And I think with COVID, there's probably a lot more things that just developed because that in and of itself created problems, just like you
Yeah.
said with, the leasing departments being shut down, or people not wanting to go and physically look at property. So
Mhm.
I think a lot has come out of that, and that's kind of created its own disruption. So,
And Laurie, and one thing I
yeah.
want to say on that is I don't think there's just one way to solve that problem either. I think Katie's approaching it in one way, and then
Yeah.
I think self-touring is another way. And I think there's a combination of both to really get that lease signed and closed. So
Definitely. And if you make it easier for, the renter, so those people that make it easier, so an apartment owner that makes it easier, maybe they have where Katie's product solves the problem of being able to see the apartment after hours or on the weekends. And all of a sudden now, you're the first apartment they can get into, right? So it's all about getting them into seeing it on their terms. And so that really kind of helps. Like you said, secure that lead and keep that lead. That's very valuable. One thing that you said in terms of, what's kind of brought this about, advances in technology. So with Christian, I know that it's been a very manual process in the past with the inspection reports and just a very manual process. So could you tell me how, kind of get into more of the automation that has allowed you, and, if there's any sort of machine learning that is inherent that allows your product to give those quotes, of course, based on geographic location and based on size. How does your product go about being able to do that?
Yeah, so the machine learning definitely, but it actually comes down to three separate parts. So the root of the problem is, as Scott was kind of alluding to, there's no like one type of inspection report. There's no standardization across the industry on a lot of these areas. It's very fractured. And so we could process a report from somebody who's using a mainstream home inspection software, or we could be processing a report from somebody who's using MS Word. Okay, and that really does happen. So the first issue we had is we had to say, look, we need to be able to understand any home inspection report. So we actually crunched over 100,000 inspection reports to get to that point. We were like, let's build that problem first. They're all in a digital PDF format, which is really tough to decode, honestly. Like the way they're encrypted is incredibly difficult. So what we do is we actually use natural language processing. So we don't use a template format. If you imagine that our software initially just reads that PDF as you and I would, it's going to read it and look and try and understand what's going on. These are giant documents. So obviously now we can do that in 5 to 10 seconds. But if you were doing it yourself, it might take an hour or so to actually run it through. So that's the first layer, is get in there, read it, identify the defects and pull them out. And we extract those along with the images. Okay. And we tie those two together. Then there's another layer that comes in, and that's understanding the defect. It's a completely different system. We call it taxonomic matching. We're going to look at what we pulled out and say, what is that? Is that a broken window? Is that a door that needs adjusting? Is it a spring that's gone on a garage door? And so it actually understands that, and it categorizes and rebuilds that report into our own system with the images. Okay. And then it's going to suggest pricing. And this is where you talk about the machine learning about the pricing, because our COO, Rob, is a contractor. So even though he's not got a software background, he worked with us to build this, and he thought like a contractor. So imagine this. You're a contractor, you get called out to replace a water heater, and you pull up to a house that's $250,000. Your quote might be $1,400. You pull up to do the same water heater on a house that's $5 million. Magically, your quote goes up a little bit. Okay, so we factor in things like that, the value of the property, the median income, the build date, the square footage, materials. And then ultimately at the end, we have a team of reviewers who basically make a determination on that. They'll look at that, they'll look at the house, MLS photos, satellite images, Google Street View, and really think like a contractor, look at the data that we have and say, okay, this is what I suggest for that repair. And ultimately, it's a negotiation tool. You could have two contractors out to the same house on the same day, and they're going to be slightly different, their quotes. So what we try and do is we create a median price, and we get those median prices by actually polling contractors in different markets. And we look for trends and feed that in. And then that's how we get our prices that they can use.
Got it. So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, and that is, there's a lot of different people in the equation that are benefiting. There's the home purchaser, of course. There's a real estate agent who, of course, does not have to be involved in in pricing. And then, of course, the inspector, I would have to say, is also a player. And now your customer that you're actually targeting is the home inspector. Can you talk a little bit about that and, why it made sense to kind of target and work with and collaborate the home inspector? Because again, that product is really kind of benefiting multiple people in that process.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we designed this product, it was to help agents. Like I was an agent and a broker. We were like, this is 100% a tool for agents. They've got this pain point. Let's go out and do this. But it was a necessary evil that we had to go work with home inspectors to do this, because agents, people that probably don't know this, but agents, sellers, brokerages, they don't actually legally own the home inspection report. There's only two parties that do that. That's the home buyer who's paid for it, and it's the home inspector. So we couldn't go and find 100,000 random home buyers. That was going to be really inefficient. So we said, we'll go to the home inspection industry. So we started going to conferences, meeting people, taking them out for beers maybe, and just asking them like, is this a problem for you? Can we help you solve this? And we found that it wasn't a problem for them. But what the thing was, they felt bad because they had to say, I can't help you to my client. Home inspectors are extremely knowledgeable, helpful people. Like that's their job, is to go and help these homeowners, and they want to do the right thing. They want to be very honest and transparent. So we found that a lot of the inspectors didn't want to say no to their client. So they were either being pressured into giving estimates, which made them really worried, or they simply had to say, I can't do that, I'm really sorry, and not help them. So when we came along and said, we're going to do this for you, we found out that was actually a customer segment that we hadn't really thought about. We thought it was a way to get to the agents. And so now we work with thousands of home inspection companies, some of the three biggest franchises in the US and some of the largest independents. And they are really using it just to foster a deeper relationship between themselves, the clients and the agents. But yeah, I think the other thing quickly to touch on is anybody getting into Proptech. There's an old saying in real estate: if you want to get rich, don't be a realtor, sell stuff to realtors. Okay. But I'm sure you guys saw this Wall Street Journal article that there's now more agents than homes for sale in the US, right? Which is crazy. So you've now got to go filter through those 1.6, 1.7 million people and find out the ones who are actually selling homes and being productive and want your tool. That was, again, with your bootstrap startup, that's very hard to do. Whereas you can go to your average home inspector, they're doing anywhere from 30 to 100 homes a month. Right. So you've got a much higher volume with one touch point. And that's what we found was the easiest channel for us.
Yeah, no, got it. No, that really makes a lot of sense. Katie, I'm going to kind of circle back to you. And also you mentioned several people that are benefiting from the real estate agent making extra income, the renter and the apartment owners. How do you market to each of those groups? Could you take me through that process?
Sure. So for the renters, they really find us by doing what they would have done normally when they're searching for an apartment. They're already going to apartment websites. They're already going to Zillow and third-party sites to look for their apartment. So we're not changing their behavior. We don't even really have to market to them. They just happen upon us, which is great. For the apartment buildings, it's building those relationships, and my team has so much industry experience and have built relationships with developers and management companies over years of experience in the industry. So we are working with them to integrate our technology into their existing sites to provide that coverage for their building. And then the real estate agents, I mean, it's a pretty good deal for them. They don't have to pay anything to use our services unless they're making money themselves. So to sell to the real estate agents is quite simple. They want these. We're not just providing leads, we're providing actual appointments that the renter has scheduled themselves. So the quality of lead is much better than you would get from Zillow, where it's just their contact information and you have to follow up with them. Oftentimes you don't even get in touch with them. You don't hear back from them. The people that take time to submit showing a schedule to see the property, they are much more serious in their search. So they are higher quality leads, essentially.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I'm going to ask Scott too, because Scott, I know that both we got a couple great examples of really, the mechanics of how it works and who's involved, who's being sold to in the process. And I know that you have a lot of companies that you invest in. I wanted to kind of learn more about, what point do you invest in companies? As an early stage seed? And then you had mentioned that you kind of help companies sort of with that expertise that you bring to help them. So if you could kind of talk a little bit about that, you could use some examples of some companies that are currently in your portfolio as well.
Yeah. So on the Proptech side of the business, Wasatch Venture Partners really invest. We really come in at kind of that pre-seed seed stage of funding, and the reason being is because with our 30 plus years of experience in multifamily or in commercial real estate or some of the other companies that we've gained experience in other industries, we like to come in at a phase of the company where we can really be influential and really boost those companies and really kind of get that big multiple on our investment using our expertise and our units and our commercial space to really test the products, provide the feedback to the companies, and almost use some of our real estate and our operators as kind of a lab, to really help build out the products. And it's worked really well. We do have another part of our Wasatch Venture Partners under the Wasatch Group, that does invest in some Series A, Series B, kind of further along companies. That's when our CEO gets a little more involved in personally investing and things like that. And we'll do some larger investments there. And those industries kind of vary, like I mentioned before. But really on my side, Proptech, we try to be that series seed or a little bit, right after friends and family, and come in and influence the company. And just a couple of good examples are, like I said, we started Rent Dynamics because of the need that we had for a contact center for all of our properties. Without a contact center, a lot of managers will deny this, but it's true. Leasing offices will miss 60 to 80% of their calls. They're busy. They've got people in front of them. And so we knew we needed a contact center, and we were talking through it, and our CEO said, well, you know what? No one cares more than we do. And so that was kind of what really kind of prodded us to say, okay, we're going to create our own contact center. And that then led into Rent Dynamics building out a CRM platform, and then building in a product along the process of helping renters report their credit to the credit bureaus. And they created a product called Rent Plus. Again, another part of the life cycle where a renter and some of our renters are underbanked and don't have the ability to build their credit like others do. And they're helping them. They're saying, okay, we're going to report your rent payments to the credit bureaus, and we're going to help you along this life cycle so that you can become a homeowner and kind of live that American dream and have that car. And because so much is driven by credit. So, but in that process, we had to roll that out to our properties. We had to test it. We had to see how the residents would react to that product, whether or not the billing structure was correct. Will they pay this? Will they not pay this? And we also had to see how it worked as far as not disrupting operations on site. That's a big, whenever you roll out a new technology to properties, they all kind of cringe. If you go out to the leasing offices and the managers and even the regional managers, they cringe. They're like, another thing that you're going to have us roll out. And so we wanted to make sure that what we were investing in, that those companies make it as, they solve a problem without being painful to the leasing offices. So as we And then when we invested in Dwello, the same thing, you know, they were building up their technology and they were trying to make sure there were not issues with the smart technology in the apartments. And so we agreed as part of our investment, we'll roll out 2,000-3,000 units and we'll give you feedback on how it's working and how it's not working and what you need to tweak. And that's been an effective investment strategy for us. And it's been a lot of fun. We invested in Resman property management software originally and eventually sold off our majority interest to Mainsail Partners out of San Francisco. But in that process, I worked with the CEO at the time that we invested to really narrow down and work the bugs out of their property management software, you know, and so it's fun and it helps these companies because we're giving them real life experience rather than just companies assuming that what they're creating is what people want and that it's truly solving a problem they think it should solve. We're saying, no, it's really solving this problem, or we're coming back and saying, you're really not solving the problem. We need to tweak this, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
I mean, that's great. So, you know, that is a way definitely of helping with the product itself, kind of helping evolve the product to be, you know, to get feedback and then be even more user friendly or more relevant. And maybe there's something that wasn't originally intended that came about after you know these customers used it.
a lot of times at the time we invest, you can look 3 years later and almost not recognize the company, right? They've adjusted and they've changed the way they approach business to the extent that they're very successful, but they look different than they did when we invested. So in a good way.
Yeah.
And then through the process, we've just kind of moved down that life cycle because we realized the natural process for a renter is to eventually be a homeowner. And you can either ignore that as an investor and just say, oh, you know, no, everyone's a renter and, you know, and we don't want to push them out of being rentals. But the fact is, once they make up their mind to buy a home, they're going to go that direction. And if you can help them and you can help the property management company and the owners of the rental real estate in the process and help them make more money to transition them, then it's really, you know, it's actually gets pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm going to kind of circle back real quick to Katie and ask, you know, what in the future, I mean, you this is a new company. Where do you see taking this in the future, either from a geographic expansion or from a product expansion?
Sure. So I'll start with the product expansion. So we are currently in MVP stage, and we want to develop, finish building out our agent app that makes the system or the process for them just a little bit smoother, having all of the information centralized for every property that they're working with. And then down the road, when we become a little more known, our name becomes a little more known to renters, then we'll build a renter mobile app that creates a very smooth process for them. But it requires them to download the app, and that takes some marketing dollars. And right now we can really get to the renters without having that mobile app need, just because they're already utilizing us through their natural behaviors of searching for an apartment anyways. And we can expand really into any market that have rentals of any property size and have real estate agents. And I would say that every market has both of those things. So, and renters. So I think we can expand to any and every market. And once I see us being able to expand pretty rapidly, once we get in with some larger management companies, we can grow with their portfolio.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And then Christian, in terms of scaling the repair pricer, how do you envision scaling and continuing on your journey with your company?
Yeah, I mean, I feel I'm in the same boat as Katie. I think repair price of where it is now is an MVP. And if you look at us in 3 years, it's going to be dramatically different. Something I kind of would like highlight on that, we released a new platform called Resolve about 2-3 months ago now that gives people the ability to interact with their report. Okay, so they can pick and choose which items they want to finally publish. And we hit the 1,000 user mark within 2 months, which we did not expect at all. That was a massive milestone for us. But what's more important to me is as I've gone and talked to those people on the platform, it's not just agents, it's not just buyers and home inspectors, it's attorneys, okay, for insurance cases. It is contractors, okay, who are using our tools to get in front of home buyers. They're basically these kind of secret people we have, like divorce attorneys are using it with home inspection cases. We have this untapped market basically because it is so tough to get information from a home inspection report into any kind of usable format. We're testing our data extraction engine for third-party vendors at the moment. They're like, we don't care about estimates. Just let us run home inspection reports and give us useful data that we can use to power the homeowner journey, like Scott's talking about, right? Like with home inspection right now, it stops when the home inspection ends. But for other companies, they want to take that information and build a journey around it. So I think we're going to become a data engine, not just this MVP. We've got a long way to go where we're going to be able to help hundreds and thousands of partners to power the next step for the homeowner simply by extracting that useful information from the inspection report. And of course, I'd like to get an app in the pocket of every single realtor in the US as well. But I think there's lots of different avenues we're going to go down, and we're going to turn around in 3 years and be something dramatically different.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that was great insight. And as kind of closing, I would really kind of like to know from Scott, where do you see the industry going? I mean, the future, so to speak, of innovation within this industry?
I think, I think within PropTech in general, I think it's going to be more of what we've been talking about. I think that companies are going to continue to identify the pain points and the problems in the life cycle of a resident, and a resident and a home buyer, and they're going to continue to try and solve that with technology. And some will be good, and some will think they're solving a problem, and they're really not. But I think that in the process, I think we will see a lot more. I think we'll see a lot of companies that pop up that are really identifying and addressing those problems. And then I also think we'll see some consolidation where you'll have several problem areas that are addressed. And then all of a sudden these companies will look at each other and say, hey, wait a minute, we should be solving this problem all under one umbrella. And you will see some consolidation of some of these companies to where they handle a little bit more of the full life cycle of a home buyer. And there will be a soft handoff between renters and home buyers, and you'll go through the process. And then there's another whole market out there. Home buyers are spenders, right? Home buyers spend money. When you buy a home, they've proven that a new home buyer spends about $5,000 on Amazon. That's not even on furniture. That's just decorations and things like that in the first year. So, and then you have all the appliances, furniture, all that stuff on top of that. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity in that whole life cycle. And the thing I like the most is I think we're going to see some investment in areas that help the underserved population and the underbanked population. And that's Rent Dynamics is really trying to address this now, which is we need to help people build credit that don't normally have that opportunity, because it opens up so many doors for them. And you're going to start to see some legislation that backs that too, to kind of push companies towards that direction. So I think you'll see a focus in some really cool areas that help people that may have been overlooked in the past,
No, I think that would be for not only those individuals, but the whole ecosystem as well, is to try to get more people credit worthy and more people able to buy, because like you said, if people buy the homes, that's just going to fuel, additional things down the road that would be, beneficial for everybody in the ecosystem. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. And one last question before we end is, what advice would you have for startups that may be watching, just startups, in terms of your advice to launch their company and to maybe find an investor? Any last?
Yeah, I think, I'm going to sound like a broken record.
Okay.
My advice is identify the problems, and identify the pain points, and figure out how to solve that problem and truly solve it. I mean, you're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to say, you're going to have an assumption of what a problem is, but then you're really going to have to get into you're going to be face to face with these people and in the weeds going, is this really a problem? If it truly is, and you have an answer for that, then growing your company and raising money will not be difficult if you're truly solving a problem. And I would say look for investor. One of the things that Wasatch brings that I didn't touch on is we try to help on the administrative side too, because a lot of startup companies don't want to deal with accounting and HR and benefits and the management around all of those things. Marketing is an area where we find most startup companies at the seed round have not spent money on marketing because it's expensive, and so we've built some things in-house to help with those administrative functions because we centralize that throughout the whole Wasatch Group anyway. So we can pull these companies in and say, okay, we'll centralize your accounting. We'll pull you into a larger group so you get better benefits and better payroll services and 401k, all these things, health benefits. And so if you can find strategic investors, it's even better to help you grow your business.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. Well, for the interest of time, time is up. So I want to thank you so much for your time and thank both Christian and Katie as well. And I think this was very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Laurie.
you for
Thank you,
having us.
Laurie.